This episode of Locked On MLB was recorded before we found out Gavin Lux was going to miss the entire season with an injury. Whoops. Well, keep that in mind. The rest of this talk about the Dodgers still is applicable. Just we didn't know about Gavin quite yet. Hey, enjoy it anyway. This is Locked On MLB.
You are Locked On MLB. Your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. If you don't believe me, then how could I have this lower third that calls me Sully? I just want to remind you that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more easy for you to say. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today to get started. Oh, it's spring training. Still getting warmed up. I apologize for some of my random hair this evening. Trust me, I've been trying to get it fixed. But it's spring training. Everyone's getting warmed up. Follow me at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and on Instagram. You can follow me. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. And be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube. And please tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On MLB, or check out some of the other great shows on the Locked On Podcast Network, including, let's just pick one totally at random here, Locked On Dodgers, with friend of the podcast and frequent guest, although for some reason it's getting harder and harder for us to nail our schedules down, but he's here on this Wednesday show. Hey, it's Jeff Snider, host of Locked On Dodgers. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, Sully, but I got to warn you, at your age, if you start apologizing for random hairs, it's going to turn into a full-time job.
Oh, pretty much, yeah. I'm just glad enough of it's still on top of my head as I approach the big 5-1. The big 5-1. Who are the great award number 51? The only one I can think of is Willie McGee, who was
Randy Johnson and Ichiro both did for the Mariners.
Oh, that's right. They? That's right. Randy Johnson and Ichiro. Yeah. Willie McGee was my first thought. But yeah, Randy Johnson and Ichiro. So I'm at the McGee, Johnson, Ichiro age coming up. Wow. I'm still technically 50, which is Mookie Betts, who should be a lifelong Red Sox. But alas, he's with God, who got him? What team got him?
I can't remember.
Oh, that would be the Dodgers. Yeah, it would be the LA Dodgers. So Jeff Snider, look at, as I mentioned before, and as I mentioned in the cold open, the Dodgers had an unbelievably successful regular season last year. And when they shut out the
that's
Padres,
our show. All right.
Yeah, thank everyone. By the way, go to FanDuel.com and be sure to eat your Built Bars. Later. Be sure to drink your Ovaltine. And by the way, thanks so much for making us your first listen and your second listen. And have it be your third listen be Locked On Fantasy Baseball. Win your league by listening to Matt and Dom every day as they bring you the best fantasy draft angles. Find Locked On Fantasy Baseball wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This has been the Locked On MLB, Locked On Dodgers crossover.
And for your fourth listen, do the rest of this conversation.
All right. And that's it.
You are locked.
No, we're not doing that again.
Oh,
Jeff. Look, we're not here to rehash. We're not here to remind everyone of the goose that laid the golden egg that was sent to pot. I mean, it was just so weird because the Dodgers just beat up the Padres all year. They won that game one. I'm like going, all right, this might be a sweep. And yeah. And
yeah, it was that weird. Their slump with runners in scoring position. Like, I mean, they went 0 for 20 at that stretch. If they had gone even 4 for 20 with runners in scoring position, they would have swept the series. It was just weird. And It's credit to the Padres, blah, 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 whatever I'm supposed to say. But yeah, the Dodgers were the better team. They should have won the series, and I'm not happy about it, but it's been months. And so, yeah, let's not rehash too much.
I'm not going to rehash too much, but I will say that, they've had a couple of years where they've lost to clearly inferior teams on paper, whether it's been Washington or Atlanta or San Diego. Isn't that 3 straight years they've lost to teams with sub 90 wins, or 3 straight, not counting obviously the COVID year.
Not counting the one when they won the World Series.
They won.
Yeah.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
yes. And I am not of the mindset that I don't, something does that really count? It was a weird championship, I grant you, but it was the way the championship was won, and they had to beat 4 teams along the way. So yes.
Yeah, only team that's ever won 13 games in one postseason. So
right.
We'll focus on that. But yeah, the last 3 times they've been eliminated from the postseason,
right,
it was by teams that they definitely should have beat. Yeah.
And the 2 teams before that were teams that were cheating. the 2017 Astros, and Astros fans, hear me say this again, the 2018 Red Sox. No one ever mentions them. I mention them at least once a week. Okay. And in some ways, that's the weirdest legacy about this, is that one of those years they should have won. Yeah. And if they did, there would be nothing hanging over this team.
I had an Astros fan in our YouTube comments on our podcast the other day saying, "Get over it, sour grapes. The reason you lost is because of Cody Bellinger." And I told the dude, look, because Bellinger was terrible in that World Series.
Yes,
but I told him, I don't think we cheated and your best player played terribly, and it still took us 7 games to win the series is quite the flex you think it is, buddy. Like, the fact is the Astros cheated and the Dodgers still almost won the series. There were 2 extra inning games. The Astros, 2 of the 4 wins for the Astros came in extra innings. Like, it was this close to the Dodgers winning that series, even though the Astros were cheating. So yeah, but it's that's definitely not something I want to rehash either.
Okay, but there's another weird thing that's happening right now that's affecting the LA Dodgers. And I have to say this because every fan base seems to think I hate them. It's weird. Yes, my dear departed father was a rabid San Francisco Giant fan, and I rooted for the Giants in the postseason. And I make no bones about that. I also have zero ill will towards the LA Dodgers. In fact, seeing that I live right down the street from Dodger Stadium, it behooves me to want to have the Dodgers do well. I wanted the Dodgers do so well last fall because the more the Dodgers win, the more I can talk about the Dodgers and baseball amongst people who don't care if Philadelphia is playing Houston in the World Series. So it behooves me to see the Dodgers do well just for my own personal sanity. Okay, I got to get that out of the way, because anytime I say anything remotely negative about anything, they say, well, it's because it's clear you hate the Marlins or whatever. They've had a weird off season, and their little cousins down the 5, not the Angels, but the Padres, have been doing what people have expected the Dodgers to be doing, which is gobbling up big free agents and everything like that. And the Dodgers offseason has been oddly quiet. And it's not been totally, dormant. The Dodgers seem to want to get all the 2018 Red Sox, just like the Red Sox want to get all the 2018 Dodgers. That's really weird. But there seem to be a lot of holes on a team that's 110 wins or whatever they won last year and should be the consensus pick to win the National League. They've had a little bit of a quiet off season. Care to talk about, comment, or complain?
Yeah. I'm not going to complain, actually, because this offseason was crazy. It was a free agent spending spree by a lot of the league. And honestly, people, for as much as people talk about the Dodgers spending all this money, the Dodgers almost never signed the biggest free agent.
That's true.
You look at over the years, Freddie Freeman last year was at least one of the biggest free agents.
That was a big one.
But they waited till he came down to their price. They didn't go out and break the bank on Freddie Freeman. They got Freeman because the Braves, wouldn't pay him what he wanted. and he came down to their price basically.
And by the way, at least 1 year in, that was a fantastic signing. I mean,
absolutely.
Freeman had a very, very good year last year with LA.
Yeah. And, if we go back to 2015, when Zach Greinke became a free agent, and he ended up going to the Diamondbacks because they were willing to give him 6 years. It wasn't the money. The Dodgers didn't get outbid on money. They got outbid on years. And the Dodgers will Bryce Harper, they got outbid on years, not money, and that's the way Andrew Friedman works, because Andrew Friedman doesn't believe in paying guys to be in their late 30s. And with a few exceptions, obviously they signed Mookie to that big, long extension. They signed Freeman to a 6-year deal that'll take him through whatever age 37, 38, something like that. But beyond that, they really don't. I don't think the Dodgers are ever going to say, as long as Andrew Friedman's running the team, I don't think they're ever going to give somebody a 10-year contract. And even Garrett Cole, the Dodgers, I think they were willing to go to 8 years. That's how they work, and that's because they value the roster spots as much as the money, if anything, maybe even more. And so the Padres have made a huge splash this offseason, and it's exciting. It's really exciting for me as a Dodger fan that the Padres are trying to beat the Dodgers. Like, there's going to come a time when the Dodgers, I mean, I know the Dodgers didn't win the division in 2021, but they won 106 games. It's like, it wasn't because they weren't good. There's going to come a time though when there's
Dodgers were outstanding.
Yeah. But there will come a time when there's clearly a better team in the National League West, and that could be the Padres soon. And I'm glad the Padres are trying, but the Padres are doing it very differently than how the Dodgers ever have under Andrew Friedman. They just signed Manny Machado on Sunday to another extension, and so he's going to be with them into his 40s. Xander Bogaerts going to be with them into his 40s. Nelson Cruz is already in his 80s and he's with them, but some of these long-term deals that they're playing for right now, which is awesome. And for Padres fans, that's awesome. The Dodgers, what they're trying to do is they're trying to build a team that will have a chance to win it all every year. And you don't do that by signing guys to 10-year contracts, because the fact is 6 years from now, when the Padres are paying a ton of money to Machado and Bogaerts and, maybe even Tatis, who knows how Tatis is going to bounce back. Tatis will still be young 6 years from now. But Machado and Bogaerts are both going to be in their late 30s. And it's going to be like, the way the Padres are building a team is why people talk about championship windows, because there's that ebb and flow of building a roster, and the Dodgers, their goal is to avoid the ebbs and only have the flows. And the way to do that is by not going crazy, but ebbs and flows, that's water, right? Is that a water metaphor?
Yeah, that's the tides. Those are the tides.
So you don't let too much water out of the dam at once, basically, because then you won't have enough left to keep the flow going. The Dodgers' goal is, we may not flow quite as heavily as other teams every year, but we're going to keep that flow going.
Well, I think one thing they're also doing is they're putting a lot of bets on players from within their own organization to fill in some of those holes. And by the way, if you're going to make any bets, may I recommend FanDuel, our new partner here. We're midway through the NBA season, and it's the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's free, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores to threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. We're here with Jeff Snider of Locked On Dodgers. Man, I am stumbling over myself today. My hair is a mess. I'm stumbling over the live reads. Jeff, let's go over let's go over a little bit of their offseason and some of the players they lost. They lost Tyler Anderson, who had a good year last year. He had I think did he lead the league in their innings pitch? Did they lead their team in innings pitch last year? I think it was either him or Urias.
Yeah, they were very close. They were within a couple innings of each other. I think Anderson did lead the team though.
Okay, well I know, but and I know the big one is Trea Turner, who I have to admit I was surprised the Dodgers. I know what you're saying, and obviously Philadelphia paid a lot and gave him a lot of years, and I understand, everything that you said philosophically about the Dodgers don't want to have players, paying for players in their late 40s. They want to constantly be having good players on their roster. I just thought I'm a big Trea Turner fan. I think that he was a good fit in LA. I know Philadelphia was pining for him like crazy. I was kind of surprised he went away without that much of a fight from LA, at least, on paper. They brought in JD Martinez, and Craig Kimbrell is gone. I think, I don't think that's a huge loss, quite frankly.
It's the opposite of a loss.
Right, exactly. So
yeah.
One of their gains was they let Craig Kimbrell go. And Justin Turner joined the Red Sox, which I found to be interesting. Who are they gambling on to fill in some of the holes and some of the spot? I know they brought in Peralta, came in, and Peralta's a capable major leaguer, and make sure he he'll fill in a hole. He won't be a negative. But is this going to be? Gavin Lux was fine last year. Is this year that he breaks out? I mean, what are some of the players we should be looking for on this Dodger team that may not be the big marquee players right now?
Yeah, I think Gavin Lux broke out last year. If you look at his overall numbers, he was just fine, but he had a neck injury late in the season. Through August 22nd, which was his last game before he missed some time with the neck injury, his numbers were outstanding. He was batting like 297, had an OPS over 800. Like for a middle infielder, he was outstanding last year. And I think he's going to be a little bit better this year. He worked hard. He went to Driveline this offseason. He put in time in the weight room to get stronger. I think we're going to see a big season for Gavin Lux. But if you break down the guys they lost, really, there's 6 guys who the Dodgers lost this offseason who actually contributed positive value to the team last year. 2 offensive players, 2 starting pitchers, and 2 relievers. You got the Turner brothers, Trea and Justin. You've got Tyler Anderson and Andrew Heaney. And then in the bullpen, you've got Tommy Kahnle and Chris Martin. Start with the bullpen first, because that's the easiest. Kahnle hardly pitched. He was hurt most of the year. When he did pitch, he was very good. I was hoping to have him back. Not a huge loss, though, if you look at what he actually contributed to the team last year. Should be easy to pick up that slack. Chris Martin, kind of the same thing. He came over at the trade deadline. He was outstanding for the Dodgers, but they only had him for 2 months. So that's the 2 relievers. You're replacing them with, Daniel Hudson and Shelby Miller and whoever else they have. They're going to be fine in the bullpen. Starting pitching wise, they lost Tyler Anderson. They lost Andrew Heaney. Anderson was excellent. Heaney was good at times. Also lost his spot in the rotation because he couldn't stop giving up home runs. And those 2 guys are being replaced by Noah Syndergaard and Dustin May. And, Dustin May was on the team, but he was out with Tommy John surgery most of the year. So realistically, that's the replacements for those 2 guys. I don't think you have to squint very hard to picture Noah Syndergaard and Dustin May combining to be as good as Tyler Anderson and Andrew Heaney were last year.
By the way, I have to admit, when I was setting up for this and I looked up Lux's numbers, I remember thinking to myself, I thought he did better than that last year. And that's so now, and I have to, I'm trying to follow 30 teams, and maybe I don't do it as closely as you do, but I have right now.
It's impossible.
I have his splits from baseballreference.com, the single greatest website in the history of the planet Earth. And, he batted .342 with an OPS of .865 in June, and his OPS in July was .949. And he had, obviously, when he had and he also, he still hit for his overall numbers were fine, but if you look at what he did in August and September, based upon what he did in the middle of the year, there was a gigantic drop off. And I'll tell you exactly why there was this sense of me thinking, when I looked at his numbers, I thought he had a better year than that, because by the time we got to August and September, I wasn't combing over the Dodgers box
Their
scores
season
because
was
they had already clinched the season, So that's why I have to admit, I was surprised when I looked like, wait a minute, I thought he had a better year than that.
If you pull up his game logs, and after the game on August 22nd, which happens to be my wedding anniversary, he was batting .297 with a .373 on base percentage, .439 slugging percentage. And that was even though he had no power last year. Like he hardly hit any homers. But he led the National League in triples. He was very, very good before the neck injury.
That's so funny, because I was like, oh, wow, that's weird. I thought he did have his breakout, but yeah, you're right. I was not, forgive me, late August through September, I wasn't going like, oh man, oh baby, he better get the.
I'm a Dodger fan, and I had trouble paying attention to those months.
Yeah.
But so getting back to the 6 guys they lost, we covered the 4 pitchers. Then you got Justin and Trea Turner. Who's replacing those guys? It's JD Martinez is the direct replacement for Justin Turner. Turner was the Dodgers' primary DH last year. He was going to be even more of a DH this year. And so JD Martinez is the replacement for Justin Turner. I expect JD Martinez to have at least as good a year as Turner had last year. JT had a down year by his standards last year. And so, JD Martinez should about match that. So really it's Trea Turner, and his replacement is Miguel Vargas. That's the one guy from within the organization that they're really betting on. He's a prospect. He's a rookie. But everybody agrees the dude can hit. He is expected to be a very good major league hitter as soon as this season. And so offensive, and Trea Turner had a down year last year too by his standards. His OPS was barely over 800. And so
he still is I'm sorry. Sure. I mean, for his standards, but for most, most people would salivate to have that type of production.
For sure.
Yeah. So,
but I don't expect Vargas
to
match
fit
that
perfectly, at least initially in Philadelphia. I think that's a phenomenal, the way their lineup is set up and the way that they finished ahead of schedule, winning the pennant last year, to add Turner to that lineup. I just think I thought that was a dynamite move for the Dombrowski mentality, which is, I don't care what prospects we give up. I don't care how many years we have to put on. We're trying to win. We're trying to take care of World Series business right now. And that's his mindset. That's his, and so, putting Turner in with this team, I think was terrific. But you made a great point that what the Dodgers are really trying to do now is to have the middle of their infield be Lux and Vargas, have that be up the middle of their infield for the next generation. And, if Lux can, avoid a bad final month and a half of the season like he had last year, and Vargas, who is, he's not the odds-on favorite to win the Rookie of the Year. What's his doodle from Arizona probably is, but he has been on a lot of people's short lists, and could be someone who could, contribute and give them that boost they need. And this is not a lead into a Built Bar read.
And so he is. Vargas is the only obvious step back of those 6 guys they lost. I think Vargas will be not as big of a step back from Trea Turner as maybe some people think, but he's going to be a step back. But then you've got whoever replaces Cody Bellinger in center field is going to have a better year than Cody Bellinger had last year. Max Muncy is likely to have a better year than Max Muncy had last year. Chris Taylor is likely to have a better year than Chris Taylor had last year. And so realistically, no, the Dodgers aren't going to win 111 games again this year, but that's only because it's impossible to repeat. No team has ever won 111 games of back-to-back seasons, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if this team wins 103 games this year, because they're still, people look at what they didn't do this offseason and they forget they've still got Mookie Betts. They've still got Freddie Freeman. They've still got Will Smith. They've got Gavin Lux. The guys they did bring in, and they've still got Julio and Clayton Kershaw and Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin and Noah Syndergaard. That's potentially they're going to need a 6th starter once in a while because of injury and fatigue. But when those guys are on the mound, chances are they're going to be really good.
And I got to make this very clear. I was singing the praises for the Padres both on this Monday show at the beginning of this show, before every Dodger fan starts throwing tomatoes at me, I think the Dodgers are a wonderful team. And it would not stun me if they won 100 games. It would not stun me if they win the World Series this year. It would, I mean, they, when you think about the teams with legit shots at the World Series in the National League, you have the Mets and Braves, you've got San Diego, you've got Los Angeles, and you give credit where credit is due to the defending champs, the Padres, and St. Louis has a lot of talent on their team, and they're, they're going to be in the mix. But I think the four, Atlanta, New York, Los Angeles, and San Diego, I think the four most realistic teams in the National League. Sorry, Philadelphia. I think the Phillies are going to be good. But I think all four teams I just mentioned there are mid 90 to 100 win teams. And and which by definition means you're an elite team. And I think Los Angeles has as good a shot as any to go back to the World Series this year.
Yeah. And when you look at, like we talked about, 3 of the last 4 years, the National League representative in the World Series wasn't a really good team. It wasn't a team that played well in the regular season. Did any of them even get to 90 wins? I don't remember how many wins the Nationals had.
Yeah, I think they got like 91 or 92. So I think they were the outlier.
And so, anything can happen in the postseason. And that's why the Dodgers model continues to be put together a team that's going to get to the postseason and then hope that some of those hard hit balls with runners in scoring position, instead of landing in Manny Machado's glove, they land on the grass somewhere.
We're here with Jeff Snider of Locked On Dodgers. You know what? I was thinking about another National League team that had a wonderful run in between the throughout the 2000s and 2010s were St. Louis. And St. Louis won 2 World Series in that run. And they were by far their 2 worst playoff teams were the 2006 team, which barely had a winning season, and happened to catch the Padres with their pants down and happened to get a called third strike on Carlos Beltran at an opportune time, and happened to get the Tigers where they forgot to do pitcher infield practice. And that 2006 team was really weird. And then you have had the 2011 team, which should not even have been in the playoffs, because the only reason they made it was because the Braves did a completely startling belly flop. And then the Phillies, the most stacked Phillies team I've ever seen in my life, were shut out. The squirrel runs across. And then, Nelson Cruz forgets how to leap. And next thing you know, they have another World Series title. If you look at the team that was the 2014 that got swept by Boston, the 2005 team that got beat by Houston, everyone forgot they lost because all anyone remembers is the Pujols home run, and the 2009 team who lost to LA but had great years from Carpenter and Wainwright. Those 3 teams, just off the top of my head, and the 2013 team who lost to Boston, who were the best team probably in baseball that year. Those 4 teams were so much better than the 06 and the 11 team. Only if you are a Cardinal fan, 06 and 11, you hold close to your heart. I'm wondering if Dodgers need to find their inner 06 Cardinals and have a team that stumbles into the postseason and wins it all, a la the Braves in 2021.
Well, and even when you look just in Dodgers history, obviously in 2020, the Dodgers were the best team in baseball in the regular season, all throughout the postseason. Other than the scare they gave us in the NLCS, it was almost like it was destined to happen. But the 88 Dodgers that won the World Series, they were a decent team, but nowhere near as good as the Mets or the A's, who they beat in the postseason. In 81, the Dodgers, they only even got into the postseason because of the weird strike rules.
The Reds had the most wins in baseball, but were not allowed to play in the postseason because of the strike rules.
Yeah, and just like the Braves and the Nationals and their World Series wins count. The 2006 Cardinals, it counts because the World Series, the MLB postseason hasn't been about crowning the best team in a long, long time. It's about winning a tournament, and Go ahead.
No, I agree. I totally agree. Yeah. But that's one of the reasons why I'm in favor of shortening the season. Because part of when you had a fluke everywhere, you had back-to-back flukes in 87 and 88. You had a Twins team that upset the Tigers and an absolutely injury-riddled Cardinal team. Then you had the 88 Dodgers, who bizarrely beat a Mets team that looked like they were about to sweep them because they won the 2 Hershiser starts, and the bullpen blew those games. And social homers, and next thing you know, Hershiser comes out of the pen, and how they beat the A's, still nobody knows. But the reason why when you have a big-time flukerino like the Twins and the Dodgers, or, I'll even go a year before, 2 years before that with the Royals, who were not the best team in that year's postseason against Toronto or St. Louis, you deal with that because it's a 162-game gauntlet, and you only X number of teams are allowed in. So you say, okay, the randomness of postseason baseball is justified because it's such a gauntlet, and it's an exclusive number of teams that are allowed in. When we've expanded the postseason, and I have no problem with expanding the postseason. I have no problem with the tournament, but then I think we got to cut back the number of games you play, because first of all, I don't want baseball creeping into November. That's ridiculous. But also, I think, if you're going to have a little more of the randomness and more people involved in the randomness, then you can't have the juggernaut. You can't have the gauntlet be as long. And I also think you'll have fewer people showing up to the postseason with beleaguered arms and, bullpens that are gassed and exhausted. I would be all for having a 140-game season.
I understand your points, and I don't even necessarily rebut them other than to say I'm never in favor of less baseball. I want baseball creeping into December, just stop putting it in places where it's cold and snowy. But, I don't know. I have a hard time ever getting on board with a solution that involves less baseball.
I get, trust me, you're talking, I'm the one who's thinking about, the Angels infield during the Super Bowl. Okay. I mean, you don't have to tell that to me. I'm just saying, if we're going to adjust,
what's this Super Bowl you speak of? What's
I know
that?
it's a little flag football game they play every once in a while that Rihanna shows.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about the Cocoa Puffs I had last night.
Oh,
that was a Super Bowl.
That was Super Bowl. By the way, I have up here, just like I have some of the Dodgers. Full disclosure, I have a screen up here. Right, if we did turn it around, my workspace looks like the movie Minority Report, and I have kind of like moving from screen to screen here.
And naked people in a tub with tubes connected to them.
Yeah, I think the Padres won't win the division.
Ain't that right?
Ball. Dustin May's career is so weird because the year he made the most starts for the Dodgers was the COVID year.
Yeah. He came up in 2019 and kind of got starts here and there. And then 2021, he went down 5 starts into the season with his elbow injury, and then just made 6 starts last year to, kick things off. But the COVID year was the only year that he's been a healthy major leaguer the whole season.
Yeah. And it was a 60-game season. I kind of looked at that. I did a double take because I remember he had a cup of coffee in 2019, and they actually put him on the playoff roster. I remember that he actually made a postseason appearance against the Nationals, because I remember he had the shock of the red hair coming out. He's going to be 25 this year, and this is kind of the moment. This is one of those years where, like, okay, we've been hearing about you being an ace for a while. And yes, he's had injuries, and that's not his fault. But now, he's basically had time to rest his arm. He's pitched only, less than a dozen games in the last 2 years. So now should be the time where we get to see Dustin May. Let's see if he is who he was advertised. And when you made the great point that, a turnaround season from some of the players who may have had, Muncy had a down year last year. So if he has a better year, that's like making a trade. And if Dustin May and if Lux doesn't have the bad final month and a half, and May can actually pitch a full season, that's like making 2 trades right there.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's what the Dodgers did this offseason. They weren't being cheap. They weren't, they were looking at what holes do we need to fill and what holes do we need to go outside the organization to fill. And one of the starting pitchers they lost, they have Dustin May. Like, if you bring in another starting pitcher besides what they brought in with Syndergaard, it's like, okay, well, who are we bumping out of the rotation at this point? And they have top prospects who are pitchers who can fill in when inevitably Clayton Kershaw needs a month off or whoever, but what the Dodgers did was fill holes in ways that maybe wasn't some fans' ideal for them to do, but free agency is not the only way to build a team. And most of the time, it's not even the best way to build a team, because you end up paying you pay the same money for the best free agent available, regardless of whether it's Juan Soto or Trea Turner, or some years
Andrew Benintendi.
Andrew Benintendi, or who's that pitcher that the Yankees signed about 15 years ago? Carl Pavano. Carl Pavano got big money because he was one of the best pitchers available on the free agent market. He was still Carl Pavano, and so what the Dodgers, there's no point in having a great farm system like the Dodgers do every year if you're not going to use that sometimes, either to bring up players or to make trades. And so free agency is one way to build a team, and the Dodgers have been really good. Even the guys we talk about, Andrew Heaney and Tyler Anderson, they both signed for pennies last year as low name, low impact free agency moves. And now they're the guys we're talking about. Oh, how we're going to replace those guys? Well, probably with the same kind of moves this year that we're underwhelmed by.
We were talking on the episode that dropped on Monday with Millard Thomas about this exact thing, that especially when you're seeing more and more of the stars coming off of the board, there isn't going to be a Machado. There isn't going to be a Devers. You're starting to see, Ohtani is obviously going to be the big fish on the free agent board, but that's going to be the outlier. What will be, now that teams are realizing that it's smarter to lock your star players up for the long term, maybe buy out some of their arbitration years and get the majority of their prime, is that you're going to be finding free agency is the best way to be like tile grout. Like, we need to fill in, a David Peralta here, a Syndergaard there will fill in some holes, but you're not trying to rebuild your team through free agency, which would be borderline impossible, especially when you consider as I said, the types of foundational franchise players are going to be so seldom available. That's what made Harper such a fluke. That's what made Machado such a fluke a few years ago. That's probably not going to happen most of the time.
Yeah. I hope when you talked to Millard, you remembered Corbin Carroll's name instead of just calling him what's his bucket like you did to me.
Yes. Well, he reminded me of that. I mean, he was the one to say it. So
free agency. Oh wow, you really are almost 51.
I know.
Yeah, free agency is awesome to do some things, and sometimes there's big moves to be made. But for the Dodgers, at least, most of the time it's going to be filling in holes through free agents. And who knows, maybe they do go after Shohei Ohtani and they break the bank last year. I don't think, I don't believe Shohei Ohtani is going to get $500 million. Definitely not the $600 million that John Heyman threw around the other day.
No,
but if he does get $500 million, it's not going to be from the Dodgers, because $500 million.
It's going to be from the Mets.
$500 million is $40 million a year for 13 years or something, and that's not a deal the Dodgers are going to do. That could be a deal that Steve Cohen does, but it's not a deal the Dodgers are going to do.
Well, I'll tell you, the deal the Dodgers should do is to get Jeff Snider on the payroll, because this man knows his Dodgers. And do you know what? While they didn't make the big, splashy, gigantic moves that some people probably thought they were going to, they made smart moves. And I think one thing, we can all go to FanDuel right now and throw a couple of bucks down. Hey, did I do the FanDuel graph? There it is. Dodgers are going to be in it. The Dodgers are, when the calendar pages turn to late September or early October, Dodgers are going to be right in the mix. Whether they're the division winner or not, there's going to be October baseball played in Chavez Ravine. By the way, just reminding you that Locked On Fantasy Baseball should be your third listen. Matt and Dom do a great job. They give you the best advice to have your best fantasy draft strategies. Find Locked On Fantasy Baseball wherever you get your podcasts. On YouTube, it's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Jeff Snider's part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's his team every day, and that's the Dodgers. Tell people where they can listen to your show.
Yeah, you guys know how to get a podcast. It's called Locked On Dodgers. Type it into your phone, and you'll find it. Subscribe to it. Check it out. It's also on YouTube if you want to watch it there. See this beautiful face, along with the beautiful face of my co-host, Vince Samperio. And, and yeah, you know, and I'm over on Twitter at Snydog. And Sully, perhaps 2023 will be the year that you and I actually meet each other in person. For you living down the street from Dodger Stadium and me there all the time, it's crazy that we've known each other for years and have never met.
And by the way, I am going on the first Tuesday of the season. I bought my first tickets.
That's like the fifth game?
Yeah, it's the fourth or fifth game of the year.
Okay.
So and I'm going to go there. I wanted to see if I get opening day. Last year I went to Jackie Robinson Day. Which I was glad they're able to pull off, because remember there was the whole lockout, and at one point we were going to have Jackie Robinson Day, and the then 99-year-old Rachel Robinson was there came out in the golf cart, and I'm man enough to admit I had some tears in my eyes when I saw that she was there. Gave a real connection to Jackie Robinson Day, and
it's crazy that Jackie's been gone for 50 years, and Rachel is thankfully still with us. She's 100 now, and you know, with Vince Scully passing away last year, and you know, Tommy Lasorda the year before that, and you know, it's just time keeps on ticking, you know, and it's I was trying to get you to sing a song from the 70s.
Well, you know? I don't want to get in ASCAP trouble here. We don't have the right to do it, but
I'm always just throwing out lyrics from old songs that your listeners won't recognize, just to see if I can make you sing.
Thank you. And this is also going to be the year where they're going to finally retire Fernando Valenzuela's number, even though it's been like unofficially retired for so long.
Nobody's worn it since 1990, the last time he did, and they're finally retiring it.
All right, let's go through it. The guy meant so much for the team and so much for the organization, and still is one of the most popular jerseys you ever see in Dodger Stadium, all around there. Probably along with Kershaw and Betts. Fernando's jersey is probably worn by more people there than anything.
Probably. And he's still a Dodgers broadcaster on the Spanish language side. So he still has that connection to the Spanish speaking community of LA, which, you know, is very large. And he is a legend, and it's crazy that it didn't happen before, but I'm glad it's happening this year.
But, you know, better late than never. Better late than never. And it'll be better late than never when you and I go to our first Dodger game together, and we will do a Locked On Dodgers, Locked On MLB crossover at one point from Chavez Ravine. But until then, you can follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and on Instagram. And you can follow me at my personal account that's right there in my lower third. It's at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Talking about the 2023 Dodgers and why things are looking good for those who bleed blue. He's Jeff Snider of Locked On Dodgers. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please, I'm begging you, call me Sully.